Here's what I learned from Sergeant Evans that actually helped me become a better real estate developer, and here's some of the lessons I've learned. Number one, who is Sergeant Evans? It took me over 6 times to actually get in the military, and when I took the ASVAB test, I did not pass the very first time, second time, third time, fifth time. It took me 6, okay? And then I remember being in high school and thinking that, man, this is going to be amazing. I'm going to be able to graduate and go to the military. Well, I didn't know at the time I was actually taking slow learning disability classes. I didn't even know what that was. I just thought it was the easy classes, and everybody else called them boom boom classes. And so long story short is I wanted to join the military, but I was taking what they call SLD classes. I went to my guidance counselor or actually I went to the recruiter, and he said, yeah, you're not going to be able to join. You're graduating with a special diploma. I didn't recognize what that was at the time, so I went to my guidance counselor, and she told me, she said, yeah, you're graduating with a special diploma. And I was like, okay, what does that mean? She's like, special, you know. And I didn't even notice it because most of my life I was in this class. Even though I excelled at mathematics, English was always something I always had a difficult time from in school. Well, they said the only way you can be able to graduate with a normal diploma, and I'll get to Sergeant Evans, this is helpful. The only way I'm going to be able to graduate with a regular diploma is I have to take 3 classes after school. I have to then take night school 4 days out the week. I didn't even know what that meant at the time. Normally it's 2 days out the week. I have to take summer school, summer night school, then repeat it back my senior year. And if I miss one class, I won't graduate on time. And I will not join the military. Long story short, I did it. And I took every class. I took night school. My last computer class was computer science at Brandon High School. And that's why technically I say I graduated from 2 different schools, because I went to Brandon High School at night, and I graduated from Bloomingdale High School, a day school. And I worked in between at Terminix International as a pest control salesman. Number 3 in the country, a couple months in a row. So that was pretty cool. I'll tell you that story later. Now, where does Sergeant Evans come into play? Well, Sergeant Evans was there because he motivated me. Sergeant Evans knew that the first recruiter I told I want to join the military said, special diploma, you can't come here. He was there. Sergeant Evans was the station commander at the time. Later on, I became an Army recruiter, so I knew I wanted to be like Sergeant Evans, really. I mean, he impressed me that much. And I remember having the conversation with him. He says, hey, son, look, this is not going to be easy, but if you want to do this, you can make it. You can make this happen. This guy didn't even know who I was, and he motivated me. And I love that about him. And I did. I joined the military. I went in as a 71 Lima, administrative. They only gave me 2 jobs offers, infantry or 71 Lima, and which is administrative, which actually super helps out because everything I do in development is heavy administrative. And so I remember going to Fort Knox, Kentucky for basic training, then Fort Jackson, South Carolina. And I kept in touch with Sergeant Evans. He was amazing. This guy was amazing. And what I loved as well is he kept tabs on me. He always told me, hey, how's everything going, everything else. And he just had a ball of energy. And he was an E7 at the time, Sergeant First Class Evans. And I remember at the Brandon recruiting office in Brandon, Florida. And right next to Blockbuster, I never forgot that. And what I loved as well, I was in Korea at the time. I was stationed in Korea. And then we would keep tabs, and I say, hey, when I get back home, I'd love to, hang out. And I think one time I did hometown recruiting, I did hang out with him. And I'll share with you why this comes up in a sense of the development side. And so I went down, met him a couple times. We had I think lunch, and it was just awesome, man. And I remember then hearing back and calling the station commander, or the station, Brandon Station, and he was retiring. And I was going to be an Army recruiter. And I wanted to call him and say, hey, I'm being an Army recruiter. I got into the corporate recruiting program. I'm going to, I think it was like a 10-week Army recruiting course at Fort Jackson, South Carolina. And, I wanted to let him know because he was one of the main influences on my life for that. And mind me, because it took me 6 times to graduate, or 6 times to take the test on the ASVAB from high school. I actually had to take, because I barely got in the military, I had to retake the ASVAB again in Korea. And I would take classes. There's classes you have to take before you take the ASVAB again. And I took those classes, and the funny part is I got a 98 on my ASVAB. When I first joined, I got like a 95 or a 35. I barely, what was the bare minimum. And I'll never forget when I retook it, I got a 90, I think it was a 95 or 90, and I was like, you got to be kidding me. And that was because you needed an 80 or above to get into recruiting school at that time. This is 2000, 1999 or 2000 when I applied, and then I got in. And I remember calling up. I said, hey, I want to talk to Sergeant Evans. And they said, oh, you haven't heard. And I was like, no. I said, now, mind me, Sergeant Evans has been, Army recruiter, Army, 20 plus years, amazing guy. They said, yeah, he retired a week ago. And a couple days ago, he was mowing the grass. And he had a heart attack and he died on his lawn. And I was like, what? Are you kidding me? They're like, no, he died. And, what hit me was, one was, wow, I was shocked. Years later, what hit me, not at that time, I didn't understand what was going on. I was like, man, you gotta be kidding me. And at the time, I kind of pieced some things together. As I met a lot of people that are older, and I used to work at a retirement community when I was in high school. What came up for me was sometimes it's like if your purpose ceases, like if you don't have a reason to impact in a positive way, sometimes your internals are like it calls it. And for me, it was always in a sense of like, I just want to be useful to the world with my knowledge base. I want to be someone that is just useful, that I can make a difference in my little world. And Sergeant Evans made a huge difference in my life, and I'm very grateful. The funny part is, after I graduated recruiting school, I actually was a recruiter in the exact same battalion that Sergeant Evan was, which was a Tampa battalion that represented the Brandon. And a good friend of mine, the First Sergeant Williams, which retired as a Sergeant Major, he knew Sergeant Evans. And it was like this life full circle coming back. And I didn't get into the Brandon recruiting station, but I was in the Hanley Road in Tampa recruiting station. And I loved it. And I just never forget. It's like, I'm really grateful for Sergeant Evans. And you may have a Sergeant Evans in your life. You may have somebody that really influenced you in your life. Because if it wasn't for that, I would have never got all these lessons in sales and everything else, and Army recruiting, on so many things that's really been a huge benefit to me, especially in development. Yesterday I just got 13 acres under contract, a commercial site. And from just the original owner, the estate executor. And we're just talking, and he's just a regular guy. And what came up for me was, that's how Sergeant Evans was with me. He treated everybody beautifully, just like you were a friend. Just like you were like, he's known you for years. The rapport was always amazing. And it was natural. So, I would say those Sergeant Evans that you have in your life, consider actually sending them a text and just saying, hey, I really appreciate you for everything you've done. Just a random text. Hey, I really appreciate you. That takes something along. It goes a long way for individuals that pour in and never ask for anything. But their love language a lot of times is words of affirmation. Mine is acts of service and words of affirmation. So, for me, it's a big deal to share. Now I'm sharing because I know that I'm halfway decent at what I'm doing. I've done enough projects that the evidence is overwhelming. You go on our website, trueinvestors.com, you're going to see 107 plus case studies. It's not there to sell you anything. This is facts. This is what I've done. And I'm really working on a waste campus. I'm really working on a veteran housing right here this is the actual site of it. This is the old church. Really working on rail spurs, really working on, now we're possibly going to work on gas stations and all these new builds right now of modern homes, what we call the beacon of lights, the butterfly roofs. So acknowledge those Sergeant Evans in your life, I would say. Hopefully you get something out of this. If you want to check out those case studies, you're more than welcome. All right. This is, again, lessons that I have learned as a developer. Sometimes you have to go backwards to go forward. But, yeah. You probably got one. Don't forget to call that Sergeant Evans.